Top in the middle of the day to you boys and girls. We're actually outside the shop at the outside bench. We have us a Super Cherry 038 still. It's a very late model with the see-through tank. This has been underneath my bench for about a year or so. I've been waiting on a full wrap set of handlebars that I could assemble this saw with that were worthy of the condition of the saw itself. Internally, this saw was immaculate. It hasn't really cut a lot of anything, firewood, pretty much anything. It came with a half-wrap set of handlebars. We did put a set of dogs on it that are actually going to work. Modified the muffler. We have a dual-ported situation going on here. We have the option of doing a triple port if we need it. We're going to check it out. It was psychoized as well. Pretty good little running saw, but today I want to talk about carburetor adjustment. So I see some videos here and there. A lot of people are talking about dealing with the high-speed circuit. One of the things we need to consider with the chainsaw is, especially the older saws, I think there was about 30% of the fuel was coming through the low-speed circuit at high idle, so it's important to adjust the low-speed circuit first, which is the needle that's going to be closest to the cylinder itself. The high speed will be behind it, at least in these older saws like this. So we'll start this saw up. It's probably not going to want to idle. I got everything backed off. We're going to kind of check out the low-speed circuit. I want to get it to a place where it's racing. When I turn it in, we'll stab the throttle. We'll see how it responds. These saws flow air so well that they don't actually fall on their face like maybe like a woods ported or a stock saw will. They'll kind of keep running. We'll back it off. We'll stop and we'll look at where we are with the needle, at least how far out of bottom we will be. So let's do that part first. We'll try to get the idle set up to be around these older saws. I think a lot of manufacturers recommended them coming in at about 3,000 to 3,300, somewhere in there. We're going to kind of wing it by ear, and then we'll check it with the tack. Okay, so I had the needles backed out way too far when I started this up, and you can see it was pretty much dying right off the bat. So it's running about 2,900. You could hear the engine RPMs pick way up when I was screwing in the low speed needle. I stabbed the throttle, it kind of started to go on its face. That's about where as far as I go in with the low speed. Let's check the needle and see what we get. So we're about a turn and 3/8 or so. That's a relatively good place with a saw like this. We've cycle-wise this saw, so the flow characteristics are far superior to a stock saw or even a standard wood-supported saw, so they don't actually really fall on their face. We would be doing this on a stump out in the woods with a bar and chain. Unfortunately, that's kind of a problem the way we're dealing with this situation here. We're going to probably want to have the numbers be a little bit higher when there's no bar and chain on it, because, well, at least the high speed anyway, because that's going to drag the engine RPMs down a little bit. We're tuning without a bar and chain. It's important to note that a little shorty bar, 16, 18 inch, 20 inch, they rob you of about a half of a horsepower. So that's just an interesting side note. It's also important to note that this particular tachometer does not read the RPMs accurately like this. Has to be pointed like that. We checked that out. We'll try it again when we're looking at the high idle. I'm going to set it by ear, hopefully come in around 13.5 or something, and then we'll maybe tighten it down a little bit more as we go along. I look for the end result on a new saw, well, new out of the shop saw anyway, that we're got a heavy crack at high idle. I want it kind of blubbering a little bit. Run it for a tank, and then slowly through the day tweak the high speed down a sixth of a turn maybe, and watch the screens, listen to the engine so she's not running away with herself. We want to have the plug be about this color right here. At the end, we want the screens to be a little bit lighter than this particular color of the tape right here. If your screens are running this dark, it's probably running a little bit rich. I generally run my saws that I'm working with on a regular basis a little bit on the rich side, actually. It doesn't hurt to have a little extra unburned fuel in there. If you tack those saws, the big ones come in about 15,000. The smaller saws will come in around 16,000. So the more reciprocating mass there is in the engine, I run them down a little bit RPM-wise if I'm actually going to use them for working on a daily basis. Sometimes we screw around, sometimes we don't. Just depends on what we're doing. So let's check the high idle out. we took a look at a couple different tack readings. You can see it kind of bounces around a little bit. One of the things we have to mention is when you run them really rich, the bottom ends get full of basically fuel that's unburned and oil, so they run really rich. You got to clean them out. That's why when I first take a saw out on the brush, I'll put the bar and chain on it, run it fat for a tank. You can hear that this thing is running about 14.1 and it's running super rich. I'd probably go with that at that point, run a tank of gas through it, start tweaking the carburetor down as we went through the rest of the day. By the end of the day, we're probably going to be, with this particular saw, since it's only about 72.2 cc's, we're probably going to be in about that 15.5 range when we're all said and done at the end of the day. So that's kind of how I do it. Bar and chain, get the low speed circuit set where it needs to be. It's important to note that we're about 2,800 feet at this particular location. We're going to need the bar and chain on because that's how you're going to run it, and the chain actually drags on the engine a little bit. If you were to adjust it like this, throw the bar and chain on it, it's going to run less in RPMs because I think I mentioned already you lose half a horsepower or something in a little mini bar. 16 to 20 inches. If you're going to run a 32 like this particular saw is set up for, it's going to rob even more horsepower from you. Low speed circuit is closest to the cylinder. The high speed circuit is adjusted after the low speed circuit is set. We're looking for these kind of saws to come in around turn and a quarter out. I didn't check the high speed yet. We'll do that real quick. We're about a 1 1/4, about 1 1/4, 1 3/8, just like the low. So that's the start of the process. Anyway, that's my interpretation and my style and my particular method for tuning the carburetor. Thanks for watching this session. Have a blessed day wherever you might be on God's green earth.